What many call reality is actually only a very thin layer of what truly exists. We believe the world is a fixed place where events happen along a straight line of time and success is measured by effort. This story is so deeply rooted that we take it as the only possible truth. But what if your life, with all its coincidences and moments of deep intuition, was already proof that you are operating on a much wider spectrum? There is an invisible architecture behind everything, a vibrational field where consciousness not only observes but actively shapes the experience. You have probably had glimpses of this dynamic, that feeling of knowing something without having the information, the perfect timing of a meeting, or the sudden appearance of a solution when you least expect it. These events are not accidents. They are your consciousness, operating for a brief moment beyond the limits imposed on it, touching a higher frequency. This is what happens when you are, for a brief moment, inhabiting a higher dimension. But this knowledge is not new. It has been kept quiet in restricted circles by those who learn to access it. For decades, it was obscured by systems that feed on your belief in struggle and scarcity. While the vast majority have been trained to believe that change only happens through effort and sacrifice, a small portion of humanity already navigates a state where reality manifests in response to inner alignment. And while you spend your energy chasing results, this vibrational field is waiting for you to access it consciously. The experience you seek, or the life you desire, already exists in a field of potential. The journey we begin now is not about reaching that other reality, that higher dimension, but about anchoring it. It's about uncovering why we were trained to ignore it, and how we can stabilize that frequency intentionally until it stops being the exception and becomes your permanent reality. Because in the end, the real question isn't whether you can access a higher dimension. It's recognizing that, in many moments, you are already inhabiting it without realizing it. Modern science, in its search for order and predictability, has given us a worldview where reality is a set of solid objects ruled by measurable forces. We were taught to trust only what can be seen, touched, and proven in a laboratory. This approach led to incredible advances, but it also trapped us in a narrative that sees human experience as a byproduct of chemical and biological reactions. What we perceive as me and the world are viewed as separate entities, interacting linearly and predictably, based only on cause and effect. Yet this view, while functional, is profoundly incomplete. Our perception of reality is like that of a fish living in an aquarium that believes the glass is the edge of the universe. What quantum physics, for example, has begun to reveal is that, at its most fundamental level, matter is not solid. It is energy vibrating at different frequencies. What we call things are actually interconnected fields of energy and information, which manifest as dense matter only when observed. If physical reality is essentially a field of energy and information, then your perception of it depends on the frequency you are tuned to. This is where the word dimension takes on a new and crucial meaning. When we talk about dimensions, the mind tends to imagine portals, parallel universes, or space travel, as if they were physical places to go. But that is a limited interpretation, constrained by our concept of physical space. A dimension is actually a state of consciousness, a vibrational frequency that determines how reality is perceived and experienced. Most of us operate at the frequency of the third dimension, the state society taught us to inhabit from birth. The third dimension is the dimension of the ego, where life is seen as a series of obstacles to overcome, and identity is built on roles, possessions, and external validation. In this dimension, suffering, scarcity, and struggle, which are seen as destiny, are in time revealed as reflections of internal vibrational patterns, maintained by unconscious choices and states of being. The third dimension is defined by three fundamental pillars: separation, duality, and linearity. In the third dimension, we are taught to believe we are isolated from everything and everyone. The world is seen as a collection of distinct entities, including you. This belief creates the need for competition, protection, and constant effort to survive. Identity is built on the foundation of the ego, which feeds on fear and the pursuit of external validation. The idea that you must go after something to get it is the direct result of this mindset of separation. The second pillar, duality, defines everything in terms of opposites: right and wrong, good and bad, success and failure. This polarization not only creates a cycle of judgment and fear, but also prevents us from seeing the wholeness of any situation. Life becomes a constant battle between opposing forces, where inner peace is seen as a temporary state rather than a permanent condition. Duality is the lens that distorts reality and keeps us trapped in internal and external conflicts, wasting precious energy that could be used more productively. The third pillar, the linearity of time, is the biggest barrier to manifestation. We are conditioned to believe that time is a straight line, with a fixed past, a fleeting present, and an uncertain future. This leads us to chase goals as if they are at some distant point ahead, relying on a step-by-step plan and continuous effort. Time becomes a measure of waiting, a barrier between who you are today and who you want to be tomorrow. And in the end, this view limits your ability to see that what you want already exists in potential, accessible here and now. Understanding the third dimension not as a place but as a state of perception is the first step to realizing that other dimensions exist. When you begin to question the logic of separation and endless effort, you naturally seek a new tuning. The logic of the third dimension, with its emphasis on separation and struggle, is reaching its limit for many. For a growing number of people, the endless pursuit of external approval, the never-ending competition, and the constant sense of scarcity no longer resonate. There is a deep fatigue, a longing for something that cannot be bought, conquered, or measured. This discomfort is not a problem but a clear sign that your consciousness is ready for change. It is a natural impulse, a kind of evolutionary call that pushes us beyond the limits imposed on us. At this point, the transition to the fifth dimension becomes not only possible but inevitable for those who sense this call. The fifth dimension is not a distant destination or an unreachable utopia. It is the next state of consciousness in your journey, a state of interconnection and flow. If the third dimension is built on the belief that you are separate, the fifth dimension is the direct experience that everything is connected. Time stops being a barrier and becomes a field of simultaneous possibilities, and life, instead of a struggle, becomes a coordinated flow where circumstances align in response to your inner state. The transition does not require you to move anywhere. It requires you to recalibrate your interior. This is a process of unlearning the logic of the third dimension, letting go of the need for control, releasing the fear of scarcity, and stopping the search for approval. When you free yourself from these patterns, your frequency rises and you begin to experience life in a lighter, more synchronized way. Manifestation becomes less about forcing something to happen and more about allowing what already exists in potential to naturally appear in your life. This change is subtle but profound. It's why you may feel out of sync with the world around you, with conversations or ambitions that once seemed important. The discomfort you feel is the friction between your new frequency and the dominant frequency of the third dimension. It is confirmation that the recalibration process has already begun. The key now is not to fight it, but to welcome it, and then understand how the logic of creation completely reverses when you operate from this new state of consciousness. This recalibration, however, is not an instant leap. It is a gradual process, a constant tuning adjustment. What you once considered your comfort zone in the third dimension, with its routines, habits, and limiting beliefs, begins to dissolve. This can bring moments of uncertainty, but this instability is actually the sign that the foundations of your old world are being replaced by something more authentic. You are, in fact, preparing to operate from a new system of rules, where energy and resonance are more powerful than physical effort. The mind conditioned by third dimension operates under a simple, linear logic. To reach a goal, you must chase it. This formula, taught for generations, convinces us that success is a distant destination achieved through effort, struggle, and sacrifice. And reality in this paradigm is something external you must control. But the logic of the fifth dimension completely reverses this equation. Reality is not conquered, it is tuned. What you seek already exists as a potential, waiting only for your frequency to align so it can manifest in your experience. This new mechanism of creation operates through resonance, not pursuit. In third dimension, you try to change the external world to feel better inside. In fifth dimension, you focus on changing your internal state, and the external world adjusts. Your vibrational coherence, the harmony between your thoughts, emotions, and intentions, acts like a magnet. This field reorganizes people, events, and circumstances around you, creating the scenario that matches your dominant frequency. Manifestation becomes an act of being, not of doing. The most radical change this logic brings is the release of the obsession with how. The third dimension mind needs a detailed plan for every step, a complete map before starting. But in the logic of fifth dimension, the how is not your responsibility. Once your vibrational field aligns with what you desire, life itself handles the details. Opportunities arise from unexpected places, the right connections form, and the path unfolds smoothly without the need for exhausting control. This shift, from controller to tuner, is the most challenging step for those in transition. It requires a deep surrender of the need to struggle and an embrace of trust in the invisible process. That's why many people try to apply principles of the law of attraction and fail. They are trying to attract an external result from an internal frequency of scarcity and anxiety. The vibrational field does not lie. It does not respond to what you say you want, but to what you truly feel and sustain as truth. True mastery is not in manipulating the world, but in constant self-calibration. It's vital to understand that this recalibration is not a state of passivity. On the contrary, it demands a much more subtle inner vigilance and discipline than physical effort. Instead of fighting circumstances, you learn to monitor your own field, ensuring it is not contaminated by fears, doubts, or the energy of others. It is a shift of focus from doing to being. When your being holds the frequency of what you desire, the doing becomes a natural, light, and effective extension. This constant calibration is what leads to the next level, where the evidence of this change becomes undeniable. The transition from the third to the fifth dimension is not just a mental paradigm shift. It has direct, measurable effects on your physical body. Our body is not a passive container, but a sophisticated biological antenna designed to receive and transmit energy. This understanding brings us to one of the most important concepts of the transition: the coherence between the heart and the brain. Science, through institutes like HeartMath, has shown that the heart has an electromagnetic field 5,000 times stronger than the brain's. This field not only interacts with every cell of the body, but also radiates into the environment, affecting the space around us. When you operate from the third dimension frequency, dominated by fear and stress, your electromagnetic field becomes chaotic and incoherent. The brain and heart work out of sync, and the body reflects this disorder as anxiety, illness, and uncomfortable physical sensations. The experience becomes a constant inner struggle where the body reacts to perceived threats, real or imagined. This disconnection keeps you tuned to a low frequency, as internal dissonance prevents the attraction of a more aligned reality. Recalibration to the fifth dimension frequency, therefore, is a process of restoring this coherence. It is the act of aligning the rhythm of the heart with that of the brain. When your heart and brain are in coherence, your electromagnetic field expands, becomes stronger and more ordered. This new internal frequency sends a different signal to the universe, and your reality begins to reorganize in response. Physical signs of the transition, like greater sensitivity to environments and people, are your body detecting the dissonance between your own coherence and the surrounding energy. You may start to feel the energy of places and people more intensely, noticing the density of certain environments or the discord in conversations. This heightened perception is your nervous system responding to a greater amount of vibrational data. It's as if your inner antenna is receiving high-definition signals for the first time. This can lead to a periodic need for solitude, as the body needs time to process and rebalance away from the noise of lower frequencies. On an emotional level, the body also begins a cleansing process. Old traumas and stress patterns stored in cellular memory start to surface for release. You may relive intense emotions unexpectedly, but the cycle of processing them is much faster than before. Drama, which was constant in third dimension, becomes physically intolerable as the body and mind refuse to spend energy sustaining narratives of suffering and victimhood. Inner peace stops being a pursuit and becomes a default state, the base from which you operate. Even your habits and preferences may change drastically. The need to nourish the body with cleaner, lighter foods increases, and you may notice an aversion to substances once consumed without thought. Sleep patterns shift, and it's common to have more vivid dreams and shorter periods of deep sleep. These changes are the body's biological response to becoming a clearer conduit for the new frequency. It is adapting to become a more efficient vehicle for your expanded consciousness. Recognizing these signs as part of the recalibration process is crucial. Many interpret them as health problems or emotional crises, when in fact they are evidence that your body is evolving in alignment with your consciousness. Instead of fighting these symptoms, you welcome them as proof that the transition is not a theory, but a visceral experience. And this new sensitivity is what enables you to recognize the language of the universe in your daily life. If your body is the antenna that picks up the new frequencies, synchronicity is the visible proof that this tuning is working. Far from being mere coincidence or a whim of fate, synchronicity is the universe's language responding directly to your vibrational field. It is the point where consciousness and the external world meet and align meaningfully. In the logic of third dimension, these events are seen as pure luck. In fifth dimension, they are undeniable evidence that you are in resonance with what you desire and with the flow of life itself. The phenomenon of synchronicity shows that time is not a linear barrier. When you are aligned, the universe doesn't need to follow a plan, a step-by-step process to bring you something. Instead, it instantly reorganizes events to create the perfect opportunity. You think of a person and they call you. You need information and it appears in a random conversation. You manifest a desire and the chance to fulfill it shows up in a completely unexpected way. These are not accidents, they are reality bending to your state of being, communicating that you are on the right path. Synchronicity also acts as a feedback system. It is confirmation that your intention, when free of effort and sustained by emotional coherence, has the power to organize the world around you. The more attention you pay to these events and recognize them as the language of your consciousness in action, the more they multiply. It's as if, by validating the tuning, you send a stronger signal and the universe responds with even greater clarity. As a result, you stop being a mere observer of life and become a conscious participant. This experience demystifies the idea that life is a series of random events. It reveals that there is an invisible, ever-present force orchestrating everything in your favor. Where third dimension sees chaos and unpredictability, fifth dimension finds order and purpose. Synchronicity is the reminder that your outer reality is a direct echo of your inner world. When you become aware of this, control gives way to trust, and the anxiety of pursuit is replaced by the calm of manifestation. This new way of seeing the world, however, doesn't apply only to external events. The same logic of resonance also redefines your closest relationships. Your vibrational field acts as a filter, and the quality of your human connections becomes a perfect reflection of your state of being. In the logic of the third dimension, most connections are based on roles, expectations, and interdependencies. We relate to fill a need, to gain validation, or to maintain a give and take dynamic that is not always balanced. But when you begin to tune to the frequency of the fifth dimension, your relationships become mirrors of your inner state. The density of another person, their beliefs and fears, becomes unbearable if it doesn't align with your own frequency. That's why, during the transition, many friendships and family ties seem to dissolve, not because of conflict but simply from a frequency mismatch. The energy that once sustained the connection no longer resonates. You no longer have patience for drama, for victimhood, or for conversations stuck in patterns of scarcity and complaint. This change is not an act of selfishness, but of self-protection. Staying in environments or relationships that drain your energy becomes so physically uncomfortable that your consciousness forces you to step back. This dissolution makes space for new, more authentic and elevated connections. You naturally begin to attract people who resonate with your new frequency. These relationships are based on interconnection, mutual respect, and support without the need for masks or predefined roles. It is a shift from the logic of I save you, you save me, to I am whole, you are whole, and together we create something new. This clarity highlights one of the most important points of the transition, the concept of not saving others. Understanding that each person is on their own evolutionary journey is liberating. Trying to fix or save someone is a remnant of third dimension thinking. At the fifth dimension frequency, the purest form of love and service is to sustain your own frequency, maintaining your coherence. Because when you do this, you become a lighthouse, offering an example of how it is possible to live in alignment without trying to force change in others. Your elevated frequency can influence the environment and the people around you without effort or conflict. This is the purest form of service. You become the change you wish to see in the world. The shift to a higher frequency requires that you develop a crucial skill, becoming a conscious observer. In the logic of the third dimension, reaction is the norm. Faced with an external stimulus, whether a negative comment, an unexpected event, or someone else's drama, the mind and body react automatically and instinctively. You feel compelled to respond, to defend yourself, to get involved. This constant cycle of reaction drains your energy and keeps you trapped in the frequency of fear and control. The conscious observer, on the other hand, is the one who can create a space between the stimulus and their response. Instead of reacting immediately, you step back into a point of silence and watch the situation without judgment. You acknowledge the emotion that arises, anger, frustration, or fear, but you don't identify with it. This practice breaks the cycle of reactivity, preventing the drama of third dimension from attaching to you. This ability is the primary tool for maintaining your vibrational coherence. The drama of third dimension is, at its core, an attempt to pull you down to a lower frequency. Someone offends you, a problem appears at work, or bad news arrives. If you react, you instantly misalign your electromagnetic field, wasting energy and losing your tuning. But when you become the observer, you preserve your energy. The situation still exists, but your relationship with it changes completely. You are no longer a victim of circumstances, but the master of your own inner state. The practice of being the observer does not mean being passive or indifferent. It means being strategic with your energy. Instead of fighting what is happening, you tune yourself to the frequency you want to manifest. Action, when necessary, does not come from reaction but from clarity. It is precise, intentional, and aligned. This is the ability that separates life in third dimension, a series of reactions to events, from life in fifth dimension, where you actively choose your frequency and, consequently, your reality. And as you become the observer of your own mind, you begin to realize that reactions are not who you are. They are just programs and patterns of behavior built by your ego. The logic of third dimension taught us to build a rigid self, an identity formed by our social masks, fears, and stories of scarcity. This is the conditioned ego. It is the guardian that defends your third dimension version of the world, keeping you trapped in a cycle of survival, validation, and control. However, to inhabit the fifth dimension, this structure must dissolve. Your true nature is a field of unlimited potential, and the ego is the limit you have placed on yourself. The process of dissolving the ego happens gradually and often subtly. You begin to notice that the things that once defined who you are, your job title, your possessions, your fixed opinions, no longer carry the same weight. The social masks you wore to protect yourself or to fit in become uncomfortable. The fear of other people's judgment fades because you recognize that external validation is an illusion. This disidentification from the ego can at first cause a sense of uncertainty, as if the ground is being pulled out from under your feet. But that uncertainty is the prelude to a deep sense of lightness and clarity. As you release the weight of the identities you once carried, you reconnect with your essence, the most authentic version of yourself. You become more spontaneous, freer to simply be. The dramas of third dimension lose their power because they are largely projections of the ego. And when the ego dissolves, the drama has nothing to cling to. You realize that most of your struggles were not with the external world but with your own mental constructions. This is both a painful and liberating process. It requires you to face the parts of yourself built on fear and insecurity. But it is an absolutely necessary step for the total recalibration of your consciousness. Without this release, you cannot fully inhabit the fifth dimension frequency, because the ego will always pull you back to patterns of scarcity and separation. From this space of authenticity and lightness, you connect with your true power, which resides in inner coherence. And it is at this point in the journey that we reach the fundamental law that governs everything. Inner coherence is your true creative power. When your thoughts, emotions, and intentions operate in harmony, you create a powerful, orderly electromagnetic field. This coherence not only stabilizes you internally, but also becomes the engine that attracts your reality. This is the great paradigm shift. The third dimension taught us to seek power outside ourselves, in money, status, or approval. But the truth is that power lies in our ability to maintain a state of peace, abundance, and clarity, regardless of external circumstances. The act of being coherent is your greatest contribution to the universe. Synchronicities don't happen to make you believe. They happen because your coherence made them inevitable. Your life is a reflection of your inner landscape. Manifestation, in this context, is not an event you must force. It is a state you must inhabit. Most people try to manifest money to feel abundant. In the fifth dimension, you inhabit the frequency of abundance, and money manifests as a natural consequence. It is a shift from the logic of having to be to being to have. This is why the concepts we've discussed are so crucial. They are not just spiritual ideas. They are practical tools for enhancing your inner coherence. Each time you refuse to react to drama, you strengthen your field. Each time you release an old identity, you become a clearer channel for your essence. This vigilance and discipline are what transform the occasional experience of being in a higher dimension into a permanent state of being. So remember, the leap to the fifth dimension is a consistent choice, the choice to sustain your frequency, to be the observer, to cultivate coherence. Thank you for embarking on this journey with me. If this video resonated with you, I invite you to like and subscribe to our channel. Share this video with others so they can benefit from this message. And don't forget to leave a comment below sharing your thoughts, reflections, and experiences. Thanks again for watching and for joining me. Take care and see you soon.